Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I'm the lead learner at the South Carolina Education Association's Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. We call ourselves COOL. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at BCOOL. That's BECEWL. I want to welcome you to tonight's live stream, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful February so far. And just want to share a few things before we get into tonight's session. First of all, if you haven't had a chance to use your voice to speak out against voucher schemes, you can go to the scea.org/S39. So that is that Senate Bill 39 that they are debating and putting together to essentially take public funds and use them to give folks essentially a gift certificate or a voucher to send their kids to private schools that are not held to any kind of accountability and who are free to discriminate against students in a variety of ways. This is essentially increasing the burden of taxpayers on education and sending it to an entity that doesn't have to have any kind of rules really around it. And I think that's a very problematic situation. So we hope that you will consider supporting public schools and continuing to fund public schools fully instead of these voucher schemes. So you can voice that concern at the scea.org/S39. We also have some bills in the House now, a bill in the House that would potentially have a chilling effect on our classrooms in South Carolina, creating a sort of a culture of fear. We already are seeing that in other states like Florida, where teachers are putting all of their books away because they're afraid they're going to be convicted of a felony if they have the wrong kind of book in their library. And who determines, what the truth is and what kind of history we should teach. We at the SCEA believe certainly that educators need to be trusted to teach the full truth about the history of the United States, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that our students, of course, need access to the full truth of the human experience and the American experience. And if we would encourage you, if you'd like to speak out on that issue, to go to the scea.org/pro-truth. So very, very important that your voice is heard and registered. Right now on these two issues, we haven't heard a lot from folks. And so we need every educator and every person who is a public education supporter to take a look at those links and to reach out to your state leaders and reach out with your voice to support public schools. As always, you can connect with us at the SCEA at the scea.org/connect. And of course, we'd love to have you as a part of our movement. If you aren't currently a member of the SCEA, we invite you to be a part of our movement. And you can see at the bottom of the screen where you can go to do that, join the scea.org, or you can text the word join to 48744. And a couple of Facebook folks saying, I pay taxes for all students in schools, not just some, not private school vouchers. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you have anything you'd like to comment on throughout tonight's broadcast, you can post those comments on Facebook, and then I can read them and potentially bring them in. So we would love for you to share your thoughts and questions with tonight's guests and with me. So let's see. Let's take a look at tonight's guests. Last summer, we had a retreat, and E.J. Anderson, who's the executive director at On Track Greenville, came to that retreat, and he and I got to know each other and got really excited about each other's work. And so we've met a couple of times and talked over the phone and emailed back and forth. And I just love what he's doing and what the team at On Track is doing in Greenville to support students and educators in those schools. And so one of the things that we talked about is bringing on some folks from their mentoring program. And so tonight we're going to hear from Alecia Brewster and Samuel Bellamy. And Alecia is the director of mentoring for On Track Greenville. She also serves as director for Greenville Mentoring Collaborative, a network of youth mentoring providers and community stakeholders working together so that every Greenville youth has the supportive relationships needed to develop into thriving adults. Her career began as an elementary school teacher in Greenville County and Charleston County, in Title I schools, where she saw the multifaceted challenges and impacts of poverty. She currently chairs the Tanglewood Middle School Improvement Council. She serves on the Greenville Homeless Alliance Advocacy Work Group and on the board of directors for the Piedmont Health Foundation. And Samuel Bellamy serves as the lead consultant for SC Mentors, a Charleston-based organization that provides mentor training, technical support, and consulting services with the goal of enhancing the mentoring scene in South Carolina. He also works as a program officer for Coastal Community Foundation. For more than 10 years, he has increased the effectiveness and capacity of community and school-based mentoring. He's also a member of Greenville Mentoring Collaborative's volunteer leadership team. So without further ado, let's bring on Samuel and Alecia. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing great. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. And do you did I miss anything in your bios that we need to share with folks tonight before we get started?
No, sounded good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's just start with give us an overview of the program that you operate, the mentoring initiative at On Track in Greenville.
Sure. So I want to thank you for the important work that you're doing, and be cool to advocate for public education, and of course the faculty and staff that make it happen every day for 750,000 young people across our state. So, thank you for supporting that work. And as I mentioned, being a former educator, my experiences in the classroom really are what inform my work, as well as being a parent of 3 children who all have been in our public schools. And I'm very grateful for the experiences that they had. So the work with On Track Greenville, as you mentioned, and I believe you said that you may have had EJ or possibly Taylor on in the past. On Track Greenville's work in Greenville is to mobilize people and the resources necessary to eliminate barriers for students, so that families, educators, everyone will be able to see a Greenville where students graduate with the tools they need and the opportunities they need to achieve their full potential. So the mentoring work was really critical. As director of mentoring, I get to help with building the pipeline of mentors for the 6 On Track Greenville schools in our community. And that work really goes hand in hand. And it was a really great strategic partnership for the Greenville Mentoring Collaborative, because we were working to build a network of mentoring organizations throughout the county, so that all youth in our community would have the supportive relationships they need to develop into thriving youth and adults. So it was a wonderful symbiotic relationship. And I'm really grateful for Samuel Bellamy being here with us tonight. He's a great friend and colleague in this work, and he's actually leading this movement throughout the state. And so I felt it was really important for him to be with us as well, because he would be able to really support other communities that are looking to build their mentoring movement, and really be able to serve as part of the support network for our young people and for our families, and of course for our public schools. So Samuel, I want to invite you to talk a little bit about you, and then maybe we can get into some of the other aspects of our work.
All right, had to unmute. Again, thank you, Todd, for the intro and for the invite. It's a pleasure, as always, Alecia, to work with you on all these initiatives. South Carolina Mentors, I mean, we're really the only organization in South Carolina that's dedicated to strengthening the mentoring field. Our goal is really to increase the quantity as well as the quality of mentoring relationships that exist in South Carolina. And we do that through a number of ways. We provide technical assistance and resources, templates, and really just on-the-ground support for communities looking to build and strengthen their current mentoring efforts, whether it's in school, whether it's in the workplace, or even just in the community. So we've been doing that for a little while, and we've been fortunate enough to come across other passionate advocates like Alecia and EJ in Greenville, who are already doing great work. And our goal is really just to come alongside them and undergird some of the efforts that they're already putting in place, and just seeing how we can increase their effectiveness.
Awesome. So tell me what you think when we think about mentoring young people, what are some things? What are some common mistakes that we've made in the past that we're learning from as we evolve these types of programs? What are some mistakes, and how are we addressing those in these sort of new frameworks?
Yeah, I mean, I can kick that off. So, as I mentioned before, I was in the classroom, and I came along about 20 years ago when I first started in the classroom, where, I had 20 plus students, as many of us do now. I was new to the profession, but that was when individualizing instruction was, kind of the ideal. And of course, the lingo changes, all the time. But this was before we had one-to-one technology. And now that we have that available, definitely are able to do a lot more individualization. But I quickly realized that mentors were going to be critical, that parents and other community resources would be extremely critical. And I think that one aspect of maybe, building something that's not sustainable is trying to do things alone, going at it alone. So I started, with trying to identify mentors for my students because, number one, I realized, as a beginning teacher that I had a college degree. I had some, field experience doing my student teaching and practicums and things like that. I had pretty much a limited experience base to be able to use to, implement again these individualized, strategies and practices with my students. But what I did not realize was that there were resources that were available, and I didn't realize how important that all of the different stakeholders in your community are to being able to bring in the resources and the people that are necessary to really fully support your students and of course all of the young people in our community. So I think that is one area where not only mentoring organizations can go wrong, but also other stakeholders in our community who are working on different issues or aspects of the issue, is that we might want to try to solve the issue by ourselves, but we all have a different component to create really more of a stronger, sustainable network of support.
Samuel, thoughts?
Yeah, I would say one of the areas where I think we kind of went off the rails a little bit is just in what we consider mentoring in general. I think somewhere along the lines, I don't know if it was media, I don't know, what it was, but we got this idea that mentoring was only for young people who were in trouble, young people who were challenged, young people who, were just not doing well in school. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I think, when we look at the basis, the foundation of what mentoring is, it's providing a positive support system. And I don't care if you're an elementary school student or if you're a 25-year-old, buying your first apartment, you need that support. And I think when we can get back to, building those networks of support, no matter what stage of life you're in, it could all be considered mentoring, and it all is mentoring. And I think once we get back to that level of understanding of supporting one another as humans, as individuals in all different walks of life, I think the state as a whole will be better, and I think the country as a whole will be better. So I would like us to see us get back to the the more basic definition of what mentoring is versus some behavior modification tool, which is what I see a lot of people using mentoring as now.
Yeah, I can see that, like, where mentoring is seen as like, okay, these kids are quote unquote troubled, and we've got to find someone to help straighten them out. And see it as more holistic than that. Like like every young person really needs a mentor in their life. I mean, every person can use an older adult. It was interesting. I've been doing a lot of work with a school out of Virginia that talks a lot about the loss of eldership in sort of society, that there's been this sort of tendency for folks like in my age range, like in the 40s, 50s, and on into the 60s, to want to hold on to their youth so much that it's like we've almost lost the concept of eldership. And I think there's such an important role that older people can play because of the experience and the wisdom that they have to share with young people. Can you talk about how do you identify someone who's going to be an effective mentor? What are some of the characteristics of someone that you know is going to be an effective mentor?
Yeah.
You want to take that, Alecia?
Sure, we can tag team it. I mean, essentially, as Samuel's already said, a mentor is someone who is acting in a non-professional helping capacity, and they're providing, relationship-based support that benefits, one or more areas of the mentee's development. And I personally, grew up, would not at all have been considered a troubled youth, quote unquote, but for whatever reason, there were those people in my life at the right time who essentially asked me if I was interested in, whether it was, an art aspect, or whether it was interested in getting involved in some type of leadership program. And those individuals became mentors because they had lived experience that I didn't have. They had specific backgrounds that I didn't have. And I was able to grow in my own talents and gifts and skills because of that relationship and because of the commitment that they had to working, alongside me as a friend, really is what it was. They just offered me the opportunity to participate and to get to know them and grow in relationships. And so that happened at really key points in my life. Once when I was in high school, and it was, again, random, community member. I was working in a grocery store, and an elder at that time invited me to go to church with her. And I did, and I got involved in all kinds of leadership opportunities because of that invitation. The same thing happened when I was in college, early years in college. There was a professor who, again, saw that I had an interest in a specific area and began to mentor me in that area. And so, again, it's about that commitment. It's about the willingness to be able to share experiences that you have had. And it's really about also respecting young people. You definitely have to respect that, a younger person has something that they can give to the world. And I think without those characteristics, it is really difficult to mentor someone, because when you speak to a young person, what they want is someone who they can relate to. And if you're not willing to, listen non-judgmentally and be able to learn from that young person, then it would be very difficult for you to be able to build a relationship with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it could probably be summed up into intentionality. Being intentional about, sharing your wisdom, being intentional about the relationship that you're building. I think many times, again, to no fault of anyone's in particular, but I think we've bought into this notion that you have to be this perfect person to be a mentor. And I think sometimes that qualification or that thought disqualifies individuals from thinking that they have anything positive to contribute to another person. But there, like Alecia said, there is value in all of us. And sometimes it just takes being able to share it with another person for you to see the value in yourself. And for a younger person, even an older person, to appreciate the value that you see in another person. So intentionality is really where it's at.
I noticed in my teaching career, so when I was in my 20s, so say 26, 27, and I was teaching high school, it was much easier for me to build rapport with high school students because I wasn't that far removed from the sort of culture that, music and film and television and sort of the zeitgeist of that age range wasn't so far away. And then as my career progressed, and then I had kids, and my kids wanted to watch SpongeBob SquarePants and Barney and so the Wiggles and things like that. I was getting out of touch with current music, and I was out of touch with the culture. And then you just keep getting older, and it's like by the time I was in my 40s, I had 3 children. I had lost completely, was really out of touch with youth culture and found that the rapport was a little bit more challenging at that point. I like Alecia's point about like, well, if you have this curiosity and this non-judgmental awareness of like the, wanting to learn from this person, that it can help. But what do you notice in terms of age? So like with a high school student, say, for example, that needs a mentor, is it important that you find someone who's on the younger end of the spectrum, or does that not really matter as long as the person has like like Samuel mentioned, an intention to learn and build relationship?
Yeah, in my experience, and I've done, as I mentioned, ever since I was a teacher, classroom teacher, I've been, helping to match mentors and mentees together. And it all depends on the person, on the people. That there are individuals who are, in their 60s and 70s who have more energy than I do and are more hip than I am to what's going on. So it really does just depend on the person. It depends on the young person. And that is a part of, really looking at those best practices for mentoring programs, because you do, learn how to be able to assess the interests and the personalities of both parties, and be able to help with making the best connection.
Is there a difference between how you look at lining up a mentor for, say, a 16-year-old and versus a 6-year-old? Like, what are you looking for in terms of the characteristics there? Like, does it work better, say, for someone who's 60? Is that generally going to work better with a younger mentee, like a 6-year-old, or is that generally going to work better with a high school student? How have you noticed any kind of patterns? Or I'll let Samuel take that one.
Yeah, so I will say it's really going to depend on the goal of the mentoring relationship. Again, we have to think about what mentoring is, or what we intend it to be. Previously, in previous generations, it was just a seasoned individual working with a younger or less seasoned individual, but for a specific purpose. Nowadays, we have mentoring programs where we are matching positive adults with young people for a specific purpose. So there are some mentoring organizations that are, just focused on social emotional learning. There are some organizations that are really trying to build skills. And then there are some organizations that are really trying to expand the networks and horizons of those young people. So I would say if you are a 60 plus year old individual mentoring a high school student, I would first look at the goal of that mentoring relationship. Are you mentoring for a specific purpose? Are you trying to introduce this person to a career field that you may have experience in? Are you just coming to provide a sounding board or a support system for that young person? I think that's really where you're going to find the kind of need to niche down the characteristics of the mentor that you're matching with that young person. Because again, if the goal is to get them to college and you've never been, whether you're 60 or 30 and you've never been, it's kind of hard to provide that bridge. So it's really going to depend on what the goal is, I would say. But even regardless of the age, I think if Alecia said it best, as long as there's a curiosity, as long as you're coming into the relationship with a level of humility, and not as I've lived this life, I know it all, you need to learn only from me, because the reality is mentoring is actually a two-way street. Most relationships, they benefit both ways. So as long as you're coming in with the right attitude, I think both parties can benefit. But I really do think it depends on the goal of the mentoring relationship in terms of what characteristics you would actually need for that relationship to thrive.
Alecia, what have you seen in Greenville on the ground in these mentoring relationships? What have been some success stories that you've seen? Like how have you seen young people specifically, like their lives head in a better direction because of that mentoring relationship, and how critical that relationship was in that young person's journey as a human?
Yeah, that's a good question. As a matter of fact, there's an example with one of our on-track Greenville schools, and youth and a mentor who were matched together, had been able to develop a good relationship over the past year and a half or so. And the mentor, just in his regular checkups with his mentee, realized that this student did not have the courses that he needed to be able to go on to a four-year college to pursue the career that he was interested in. And this was a young person who was top of his class, who was involved in school. And because we do find that many times students don't know what to ask sometimes. And so if that student didn't know, well, I should probably be advocating and saying that this is what I want to do, and making sure that I'm taking the courses that are necessary to be able to go on to the college, go down that pathway, then he would not have been able to graduate with the coursework that he needed. So they were able to identify that issue early on this school year. This is a senior who was unable to get his schedule changed to be able to graduate with the courses that he needs. So that's just one example, but that is, I think, an example of something that a lot of students face because they don't know. And when they don't have, those, whether it be a near peer who has recently been in their position, who may be a current college student or a recent college graduate, or, as Samuel said, someone who is working in that career field, who, knows what you need to know to be able to be successful in that field, that happens.
Yeah, Mev just chimed in, Samuel. She said that you're doing amazing work.
Absolutely.
So tell us what some of that amazing work is. Tell us what you've seen on the ground. Maybe a story or two that you want to share.
Thank you. I'll say, I didn't pay Mev to say that, by the way.
I'll say it too. Sima's not paying me either.
I do know Mev from some of my work. She was a teacher at North Charleston High School, where I graduated from in 2001. And she invited me to come back and visit the classroom that she was teaching in. And I used to come, once a week, visit the classroom and just talk with the students. And I actually had a situation where one of the students that I encountered, just in sharing my story about graduating and coming back to make sure that, they always knew that someone from their background supported them. One of the students in the class was actually a child of one of my classmates. And I was able to connect them with some other individuals to set up a job interview. And it was really a surreal moment because it was like, oh, you're so-and-so's daughter. I know him. Let me facilitate these connections for you. And I think in that moment, it became, something very real. So it went from just some random old guy, back at the high school to a very real, oh, you're actually doing what you said you can do. And it's happening in real time. And I think sometimes that's really all you need. Now, that relationship didn't go any further than that. But I think in that moment, at the very least, we were able to show her that having a network of positive adults that can make connections for you is really what mentoring is about. It's just being that bridge that connects you from one resource to another that can, get you from point A to point B. So I think that's a very real example of something that we've seen on the ground. And Mev is doing a wonderful job in the classroom, and she's been a wonderful advocate of education in the state. So again, I didn't pay her to say that. So
let's talk about like society and culture in general. It seems to me as though there are a lot of young people who are just kind of lost. And I think there's probably a lot that's facilitated that. And I don't mean to sound like a sort of a grumpy old person that says it was better back in my day, but it feels like a lot of parents are, some parents are checked out. Sometimes it's a single parent household, or sometimes the parents or one parent is working multiple jobs just to try to make ends meet because of inflation and all the pressures, economic pressures, and minimum wage being stagnant, and just trying to, you're just so busy and so distracted trying to make ends meet, and these kids are a lot of times sort of adrift without a whole lot of direction. you talk about, have you seen just over the past, I don't know, decade or two, like a greater need for the mentor? Is there an increasing need for mentoring, just culture or like statewide or countrywide? Are you seeing sort of a greater need there for young people to have somebody who's can be a guide for them?
I'll say from my perspective, I do think there is a greater need for mentoring. I think every generation always thought that they were living in the best generation. So that's one thing. But our young people today have access to an unprecedented amount of information that they don't know what to do with.
Right.
And at the very least, having someone who can help them pull some of these layers of information back and make sense of it, and then apply it in real time and in a real way, in a real substantive way. That's really what the mentoring piece is about. And it is, again, it doesn't matter if you are a high school student and an elementary school student. If you have already graduated and you're a first year college student, I think the world in and of itself is a scary place with a lot happening, and everything that they taught us in school, sometimes it doesn't play out that way in real life.
Right.
So it adds to the confusion. It adds to the despair. And if we're being honest with ourselves, confused people do nothing. So we have a lot of confused adults. We have a lot of confused teens. And we're all trying to do the best that we can. So we all need one another. So I would say, yes, the need for mentoring is at an all-time high. And I think we're thankful for the internet and the resources that exist now that didn't exist previous, because we're able to make more connections. We're able to share resources in real time. We're able to have these connections that you may not have had 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So I do think mentoring is needed now more than ever.
Yeah, and I would agree is young people are going to get their needs met. They're going to try to find a way to meet their needs, whether it's in a productive way or in a way that's not going to be helpful for them. And really the collaborative concept came out of it. The catalyst was that we had in our county about 500 youth who were in and out of the juvenile detention center. And the coordinator of the detention center at the time, about 5 years ago, was trying to find some additional support for those young people. And he was having a difficult time finding mentoring organizations and other resources that could support the youth while they were in the detention center, and then when they were going back into their community, so that there wasn't this continuous cycle of in and out of the system. So, the detention center coordinator at the time identified this as an issue. He looked for the support in the community and was able to bring together various mentoring organizations and other stakeholders at the time to be able to begin talking to each other, because we were very disjointed at the time. One organization didn't know what the other organization was doing. And sometimes they were in the same communities, maybe even doing the same work. And so it was really important at the time for us to begin coming together, talking to each other. And little did we know at the same time that Greenville Schools was finding that was one of the top 3 needs that principals and teachers were telling them that they needed in the school. So yes, we are finding that there is a greater need for mentors, and we saw it from the juvenile detention system to the Greenville County school system to even, we also are hearing, I think, from a lot of employers that they are, seeking, better employees. And we see this as, mentoring being a way to be able to even address those needs as well.
Okay. Yeah. What the title of this is Creating Structures for Equitable and Sustainable Mentoring. So how does one go about creating the structures? Like, what does this look like logistically? How does the mentoring program, how is it built, and how does it operate to be effective?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that a mentoring program has to do to be effective is be clear on why they exist. You know, most mentoring programs have a specific goal, just as all businesses do. Um, they exist for a reason. There is a need that is happening within the community that they believe that their program is going to be the solution for. And I think it all starts there, having a solid solution to the problem that you're trying to address. Then I believe it goes to, you know, the foundational pieces of it, like making sure that you have the appropriate staff, the staffing levels, the training, funding, you know, in some cases, marketing, just being able to make sure that you can reach the population that you're trying to reach, being able to sustain the efforts once you've started, and then being able to talk about it to the public. Like, how is your program addressing the problem that you're trying to solve? How does it connect into other systems? Like you might be a community-based mentoring program, but the work that you do in the community directly impacts the school system, which directly impacts, you know, your local government. So how do all of those systems work together? I think as a mentoring program, it's not just working with the young people. It's also trying to fit into the larger community and being able to address some of their needs as well. So I would say it starts with having a clear why, you know, clear understanding of what you're trying to do, what solution you're trying to bring to the table, and, you know, training, making sure that you have the right mentors, you have the right strategies in place to be able to meet and scale, you know, your solution.
Yeah, and I would just, I guess, to add to that, that was something that the collaborative identified as a way that working together we could help to build that capacity for, you know, quality programs. And just in doing the research, even for, you know, how to build a collaborative, we, you know, research what are those best practices for working together, because even within that, you know, there is a lot of times, you know, the individuals who are really looking to promote, maybe self-promote, you know, themselves or their own organization. And we had to even, you know, learn how to have those, you know, collaboration competencies built into our collaborative and into our organization. So researching best practices, as Samuel already stated, making sure that we're using the resources that are available. And the National Mentoring Partnership is a wonderful resource for any mentoring organization and collaboratives working together. Assessing who's providing mentoring in your community and how they're providing it is extremely important. Here in Greenville, we began mapping out where and how accessible those programs were. We were able, in our first year of coming together, put together a white paper to really show what the state of mentoring was in the community at the time. And that gave us really some important data that we needed, because that really showed us that we were needed in the community. We found that we only had about 2% of young people who had access to organized mentoring programs at the time. And nationally, the average is about 8%. And so we saw that it wasn't just that, you know, we thought there was an issue, you know, that, you know, the schools thought that they couldn't find mentors. It was like there really was a deficit in the number of mentoring opportunities in our community at the time. So from there, we were able to organize around that problem and begin to implement best practices to being able to work together and leverage our resources.
I think, you know, educators are going to be watching this, and some may be wondering, you know, maybe they're wondering, like, where do you even get started, or how can I, as an educator, sort of support the either the development or the creation, the development, or the sort of support around a mentoring program in my area. So what role can an educator play if someone is interested, if there's an educator watching and they don't really know of a formal mentoring program in their area? How can they get started?
Absolutely. Well, there are a couple of things that they can do. First, I would say, you know, applaud themselves for even thinking that to be a solution. because I know sometimes it seems like it's right there and it would be an easy solution to grab, but many people overlook it. There are a lot of organizations that exist in certain communities that can provide resources for educators inside the schools. For a teacher that's looking to either continue a program, refine a program, or maybe even start a program, we provide at no cost technical assistance and training for individuals that are looking to start mentoring programs. All of our information comes from Mentor, the national partnership, which is a 30-plus-year-old organization that's, again, dedicated to improving the quality and quantity of mentoring relationships in the state, in the country. I'm sorry. They publish evidence-based and practitioner-informed, standards, guides, templates, trainings, you name it, the whole gamut, and it's all at no cost to organizations and individuals looking to start those programs. So I would say, reach out to us. Let us know that you're there. Let us know that you are looking for those resources, and we're more than happy to again come alongside you and help support whatever efforts you're already doing. We're not looking to replace anyone. We're literally here to walk beside you, kind of like guardrails on a highway. That's really our goal, and it's really just to make sure that you produce the best program possible to reach the goals that you're trying to reach. So reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to assist. And where we can't assist, we have a network of individuals across the country that have been doing it much longer than us. That, again, thanks to technology, allows us to connect people, in a much faster and succinct way.
And how can they reach out to you?
Sure. You can go to, you can email me directly, sbellamy.ta@gmail.com. If you're looking for any resources or any guides, you can go to mentoring.org. Again, a lot of those resources are free of charge to download. You can apply for technical assistance through that website as well. And again, if you have any questions about it, or if you need help walking through it, just email me and I'll be more than happy to do that for you.
All right. So mentoring.org.
Mentoring.org. Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right. Alecia, what are your thoughts on that? All that.
Agreed. We were glad to find mentoring.org and Samuel here, in the upstate, not too far away from us, 3 hours away in Charleston. So that was a great connection that we were able to make. The only thing I would say is, again, coming from, how I even got started in this space as a teacher, is don't do it by yourself, because typically, if you're thinking, my students could benefit from it. I was an elementary school teacher, but I was thinking to myself, okay, if my students, if I know that I am an inexperienced teacher and I can't give them everything they need, then I need to figure out what they're motivated by, because my energy level, my capacity is limited. And I needed to figure out how to get them motivated to want to participate and want to be actively engaged in the day-to-day, objectives for the classroom. So, I'm sure was not alone, but I was doing that by myself. I was reaching out to, classmates who I graduated from college with, and others in the community that I knew, to come in and pair them up with students who I knew were interested in different occupations possibly. But that was unsustainable. So again, talk to your school leaders, talk to other teachers in the building, because there may already be something going on or other programs that you may not know about that you can tap into.
When you identify mentors, do they go through a particular type of training? And if so, what are some of the components of, some of the key components of that training?
Yes, there are absolutely, training components that all mentoring organizations would have to include. And they include, things like how to keep, yourself and your young person safe. They include, as Samuel mentioned, there's essentially a best practices, guide to serving as a mentor, making sure that you understand what a mentor is and what it is not. There are some common mistakes that a lot of mentors make when they begin mentoring. And so you learn about what those are. Samuel, jump in for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a great job. I would say, so if you're in a formalized program, of course, background checks is always going to be, first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
There is sort of in a lot of programs, there's an application process that happens. There's also an interest survey that, again, connects some of the expertise of the potential mentor with some of the interest of the young person that they would be matched with. And that helps us kind of put the two together as best that we can based off of what we see. There's usually involves some sort of interview process because, again, what you write on paper may not be what actually shows up in real life. And also, it's a good temperature check for us. Sometimes you may have a heart of gold to mentor, but your temperament may not be best suited for the age group or the young person that we're trying to match. So things like that also, come into play. But like Alecia said, training on basic relationships, consistency, being non-judgmental. And I think it's also important, because we are in South Carolina, making sure that, you have a cultural humility about yourself. We don't want to, we want to make sure that the young people are supported, and we're not putting them in a situation where just because you're an adult, you're automatically right. That's not always going to be the case. So we do want to make sure that we have those conversations with potential mentors. But, also the training also happens for mentees and their families as well. Because a lot of times parents and mentees don't really know how to access all of the benefits of a mentor because they haven't been introduced. Typically mentoring is kind of introduced to people as you are on the receiving end of the benevolence of the person who's being the mentor. But the reality is you are being allowed into that young person's space. You are being allowed, you are being granted access to that young person's trust and that family's trust. And that comes with a lot of responsibility in and of itself. So training has to happen on both ways. We want to make sure that the parents and mentees understand what they're getting involved in. But we also want to make sure that the mentors know that this isn't like a fly-by-night thing. We have a lot of young people who have already been let down plenty of times. So we're careful, to make sure that anybody that we connect them with, that they are going to be there for the long haul or the foreseeable future. And that's why as a trainer, I would want to make sure that not only are we recruiting the appropriate mentors, but we're training them. But there's also some monitoring and supporting of the mentoring relationship. So we're not connecting, mentors with mentees and then leaving them to their own devices. Like, we want to make sure that we're supporting that relationship as it builds, as it grows. We're able to pivot if things come up. So there is that monitoring and supporting of the relationship, but also every relationship is not going to last 10 years. Like every relationship is not going to have that storybook ending. So there's a proper way to close those mentoring relationships as well. There's a proper way to hand off, those mentoring relationships. So we want to make sure that all of those things are kind of put in place. And all of that is what encompasses training for not only a mentor, but a potential person running a program, also a person receiving services.
Go ahead, Alecia.
I was just going to say, Samuel, I'm so glad that you went through the whole process, because that is really important to, begin with the end in mind. And I think every good mentor training really does put the whole process into perspective. And they also include the parent and the youth, because they are natural allies in this work. And of course, if the young person doesn't want a mentor, then you can't mentor someone who doesn't want a mentor. So doing the training and making sure that the youth has is fully, is fully in, on board basically, and wants to have this relationship is critical as well, because just because we think that a young person needs a mentor doesn't mean that that young person is ready for one.
Or ready for that particular person, right?
Right.
So I imagine that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine that there are more young people needing mentors than there are mentors. If that's the case, how do you determine which students get mentors first?
And I can speak to one aspect of this, and Samuel, please go on from there. But one of the beautiful things about mentoring programs in general is that they look different. And so there are mentoring organizations that provide group mentoring, and they have specific structured ways to be able to provide the group mentoring. And this is because we know that there is not going to necessarily be one mentor for every young person, but you can have very effective group mentoring programs and sessions as well. And then there are, activity-based mentors, and you can also, work to train. And I've been in programs where we work specifically with teachers, and I know plenty of teachers who have become fantastic mentors, and they already have many times the access, the day-to-day access to young people. So I think, thinking outside of the box is really important. But as far as, kind of prioritizing who gets a mentor, Samuel, I apologize because I think you were about to answer that, but I did want to just, throw in that, there is that important kind of box that sometimes we put ourselves into, and we maybe limit ourselves sometimes when it comes to serving young people.
Yeah, I think it's going to go back to what I mentioned earlier with the purpose of the mentoring program. There are going to be some young people that are best suited for the particular type of mentoring program that exists in that area, for that intervention, if you will, or that solution. So I think it's a good mix between, capacity of the mentoring organization and the desire and the willingness to participate from the parent and the mentee themselves. I think when you have that perfect storm, you'll make that match. But to Alecia's point, I think even before COVID, we were kind of getting away from the traditional big brother, big sister, one-to-one model because of a lack of quality, ready and willing mentors. So other forms, other modalities, for lack of better word, other types of mentoring programs sprung up. So you do have like your e-mentoring programs, which is going to be, kind of what we're doing now. You do have, maybe a situational type mentorship where it might be happening in a workplace where, I'm mentoring you to get you a promotion, or I'm mentoring you until you get comfortable in a new role. So it's like kind of a short-term mentoring with a specific end. So there's a goal in mind. There's a beginning and an end date. That's still considered mentoring. And then you start to expand, the definition again, and you look at sports teams. You look at after school clubs. You look at after school programs. There are so many ways in which mentoring can happen. So it's less about the program sometimes and more about the mindset behind, how relationships form. So I think, again, the more we can get people in general to just realize that mentoring doesn't look one way. Mentoring can happen in the most spontaneous of ways, and it doesn't always have to happen in a structured program. If you think about, back in our day, we didn't have mentoring programs. We had uncles and aunts that just took us under our wing and said, come on, ride with me and go to the store. And they told us about life and told us how to change tires and all those things. That was all mentoring before we called it mentoring.
Right.
So that still exists. That's still possible. It just goes back to, having that intentionality and that willingness to see someone else thrive, and you being able to play a part in that.
Do you sometimes, is it are high school students and or college students serving as mentors?
It's mostly you might see that the senior high school students. Uh, uh, you might see.
He's breaking up a little bit.
So, Samuel, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to come back in, but definitely, older high school students are able to, be trained and serve as very effective mentors, as well as college students. And there are a lot of college programs and groups that are providing mentoring and have mentoring groups in various communities throughout the state. And I think this really does. I'm glad that you kind of ended with this conversation about younger people serving as mentors, because when we talk about equity and we talk about sustainability, youth voice is a part of that conversation. And I think making sure that we don't get so far down the pathway that we forget about who this is really about, which, our young people, and making sure that we're truly hearing from them, even when we're creating and designing our programs, I think is essential. So youth voice, and I think that really does. And Samuel, I don't know what all you were going to say, but I did say that the older high school students and college students absolutely could be trained to serve as very effective mentors.
Exactly what I was going to say. Thank
you. Right. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time together. And before we go, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you felt like we needed to mention about this subject, or something you just want to share with folks who might be watching that we haven't gone over yet?
I would just want to say thank you. Last month was National Mentoring Month, and if you are not already following the work of the National Mentoring Partnership, I encourage you and all of the educators who are following Be Cool to tune in to the work of the National Mentoring Partnership and the legislation that we are working to ensure gets passed to provide quality mentoring opportunities for all of our young people. We know that mentoring is effective. National data shows us that young people who have mentors are 55% more likely to graduate from high school.
Wow.
And 130% more likely to hold leadership positions in their school and in their community. And there's a lot of other data that's been collected over several decades that really show the impact of mentoring. So I would encourage you to follow the movement.
Samuel, any final thoughts?
Yeah, again, want to thank you for the opportunity. Again, Alecia, for her leadership. And I'll just say that, one of my good friends, Rajan Lewis, he always says that the young people are going to be mentored by somebody, whether it's positive or negative. They're going to be influenced by somebody. We can be proactive. Mentoring does not have to be a reactive situation. It can be very proactive. We can get ahead of a lot of the issues that we see that's happening in the community, in the schools. And it could start right here with each one of us. So if you have an inkling of interest in mentoring, if you have a small desire, I would love to work with you. Alecia would love to work with you. We're building, these collaboratives all across the state. So I promise you there's somebody near you that can provide training, resources, and help to help you do what you're trying to accomplish. And we just want to be a part of that. So
awesome.
Again, thank you for that.
Thank you, Alecia. Thank you, Samuel, for your time. Thank you for the important work you do. It's so critical. And, we never really know for sure how many lives you'll touch and pathways you'll change for the better. But your work is critical. And thank you for it. I have a lot of gratitude for the important work you do. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. That was the Director of Mentoring for On Track Greenville, Alecia Brewster, and Samuel Bellamy from SE Mentors. And you can learn more at mentoring.org. I encourage you to go to that website to learn more about the program, to connect with them. If you want to email me, you can email me, toddscholl@gmail.com, and I can get you in contact directly with Alecia or Samuel. I want to remind everybody who's watching tonight just a couple of really important issues that are happening in our state, and we absolutely at the SCEA need you to lend your voice to these issues. The first issue is Senate Bill 39, which would create a voucher system, and it would provide essentially gift certificates for parents who want to send their kids to private schools. Of course, there's nothing wrong with it. If a person wants to send their kid to a private school, that's their own personal choice. The question is whether public tax dollars should be used to fund the tuition of folks who want to attend private schools, especially when those private schools are unwilling to be held accountable to the public in the same way that public schools are, especially when those public schools are free to discriminate. For example, they don't have to take in students with disabilities, or they could, a student who says that they're lesbian or gay or transgender, they could deny admittance to them based upon that. I don't think it's appropriate for us to spend public tax dollars on that. If you agree with that, if that common sense idea resonates with you, we encourage you to go to the scea.org/S39 and let your voice be heard. Please, please, please help protect public education and voice your concern about these voucher schemes. And also, you can go to the scea.org/pro-truth to share your concern about the potential censorship that could send a chilling effect across classrooms in South Carolina. Educators who may start to feel like they've got to pack away all of their books, or are scared to even bring up issues that are relevant and important to our students about current events. We are seeing FOIA requests of folks in the community asking for the emails of educators, including their deleted emails, to see if they can find any evidence that they might have ever emailed something that they don't find to be okay. And so what that's doing is it's creating a culture of fear among many educators. And this is not conducive to being able to recruit and retain educators when they feel scared about any type of email they might have sent about a book or about a political issue. And it's quite scary. And we are heading in a direction that to me is stomping on freedom of expression and speech, and potentially going to wipe out the teaching of the full truth of American history. We all know that America, there's a lot of great things that have happened in America, a lot of wonderful Americans and American leaders, and American policies, things that we have to be proud of, but there are also parts of American history that we need to look at where there were horrific things that happened to human beings, or human beings treating other people in really, really horrible ways. And the only way we learn from that and prevent that from repeating itself is by teaching the next generation about the things that have gone wrong in our history. So when we study history, we should be talking to young people about, here are the things that we did right and here are the things that we did wrong. Let's just try to build on the things we did right and learn from the mistakes that we've made in our past. We can't do that if we whitewash history and only teach the good things and only talk about it in some kind of, simplistic, ultra-patriotic way that doesn't ever take a critical look or examination of American history. So it's important that we protect that, and with that, we protect the rights of teachers to examine the full truth of American history with their students, and stop those who want to see sort of this whitewashed version of history being taught. So if that sounds right to you, if you'd like to voice your concern about that, go to the scea.org/pro-truth. You can find this live stream and every other live stream that we do on the Cool website at cool.us. And we would love to connect with you at the scea.org. And I want to encourage everybody to check out Thursday's session. That's going to be, let me pull this off of there, with Gary Weber. This is going to be a very interesting session. I'm just warning you, this is going to be different than anything we've ever done before. He is an author. Really, I'm just excited to be able to have an hour of conversation with Gary. The topic is happiness beyond thought, and he goes into the neuroscience behind how thinking impacts our frame of mind, and it's going to be a very, very interesting and different kind of session. So that's going to be Thursday night from 7 to 8 o'clock right here, the same place that you're viewing this live stream. So without anything else to tell you, I just want to wish you all a wonderful end to your week. We at the SCEA are proud to support every educator, every person working in our schools. And if you are at a school, you're working at a school, you can be a part of our movement. Bus drivers, custodial workers, cafeteria staff, front office staff, administrators, educators are all part of our movement, and we'd love to have you as a part of our movement. And if you aren't currently a member of the SCEA, I encourage you to investigate what we're about. You can go to the scea.org and learn more about us, or you can go directly to jointhescea.org, or you can text the word join to 48744. So many incredible benefits, because when you join us, you're joining your local association, the state association, and the National Education Association, which is the largest labor union in the United States. And it is time in South Carolina that we come together under one union and speak with one voice and speak on behalf of our public schools, because right now they are under attack. And we have to come together to defend them under one union with one voice. That's the SCEA. So we invite you to learn more about it, our movement, to become a part of our movement, to become a vocal part of our movement. Come on a live stream, create your own live streams. We'll support you, and we want to support you and everybody who works in our public schools across our state. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll see you next time.